Thanks, Alex. Welcome everyone to our February 2026 Housing Commission meeting. Let's go ahead and kick this off. And Alex, I think we have one person sign up for public comment.
So Alice is signed up, but under Lucky Gardens.
Okay, so no one for overall public comment.
Correct.
Oh,
Okay.
Excuse me. I did mean to sign up for both, Alex. Maybe
okay.
That wasn't clear in my email, perhaps.
Sure, Alice, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to point out a couple of resources for anyone on the commission or maybe people watching. Excuse me, this is Black History Month, as we know, and I will send the links to Alex to share, but Alliance for Housing Solutions, the previous organization that then merged with Navaja, where I am now, we created a 7-minute video about the history of race and housing in Arlington. It's a really great video. It's quick and informative, and there are a lot of really interesting older photographs and mapping that people might like to take a look at, and it really talks about segregation and where different populations settled within the county. So I think it might be of interest. And then yesterday we had a presentation from another Arlington resident named Kristen Noon, and she is part of a group that it's called Documenting Exclusion and Resilience in Northern Virginia. And they're focusing right now on the history of racial covenants in Arlington County. And they're in partnership with Marymount University. And it's just really looking neighborhood by neighborhood to see exactly what was written in the covenants and, when and what groups were excluded. It's just really interesting information. And again, just highlights our history that we really need to know as we look at decisions and particularly around housing moving forward. So I just wanted to mention those two sources, and I will send them along for you all to take a look. I don't think I can put them in the chat, can I? Oh, I can add them to the chat. Okay, I will do that as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Next item on the agenda, if there's no other public comment, is approval of our notes from the last meeting. Did anyone have any edits or changes to the notes?
I move that we accept the notes, which I read.
Good to hear.
I'll second it. I also read them.
Okay. Any objection to approval of the notes? Hearing none, they are approved. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is Lucky Gardens.
Yes, good evening. So my name is Alex McMillan. I am the staff lead on this. I will hand it over to Zachary Williams and the applicant team for their presentation, and then I will follow it up by going through the handout that I sent to the commission in advance. Okay.
Thank you, Alex. My name is Zach Williams. I'm a land use attorney with Venable, representing True Ground Housing Partners on this project. Presenting with me tonight will be Jordy Fabian. Charles Sims is also here from True Ground Housing Partners. I see him there. I'm going to go ahead and share a brief presentation. Let's see. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that all right.
Yep.
So just by way of introduction, this is the second time we're coming to you on this project. We presented, I guess, about a month or so ago. Happy to be back. Since then, there are some important milestones that we have crossed. We were at the Planning Commission earlier this Monday, which recommended approval of the project to the County Board. We also have received a recommendation of approval from the Transportation Commission. In addition to that, we have continued to work closely with staff to iron out final tweaks to the building, to the project, making sure that We are catching everything that we need to catch before the county board hearing, which is set for next Saturday. So before I go into the presentation, Jordy, I'm going to hand it over to you. Do you want to give a couple of quick remarks?
Yes, thank you, Zach. So thank you for everyone for having us tonight. We're truly excited about Lucky Gardens and the vision we're presenting. As some of you know, over the past several months, we had numerous meetings with community members, county staff, and we greatly appreciate the feedback that we have received throughout the process. That input is definitely valuable as it has directly impact and shape the project. So we're really thankful, and we're hoping what we're bringing forward today, has shown some improvements since our last presentation.
Jordy. So by way of overview, a lot of this is the same as previously, but just to quickly run through this project is proposing 249 units at the existing Lecky Gardens site, just off of Langston Boulevard behind the Lehigh Shops. There are currently 40 units that are located there. Those will be replaced with a new building with 249, 100% committed affordable units, 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units. There will be a parking garage of 218 spaces. Overall, the project is in compliance with the Langston Boulevard area plan. This will be the first project to be considered by the board under the new plan. And so very exciting to have our first project to be an affordable housing project like this one, particularly given the ambitious goals in the plan for creating affordable housing in this area of the county. We're following essentially all of the guidance, not essentially, we are following all the guidance in the plan, including setbacks and buffers, overland relief, stormwater detention, all of those things. We are endeavoring to meet the 35% tree canopy coverage. We think we will meet it. And we're also providing LEED Silver and Energy Star certification for the building. Walking through the slides, a lot of this is similar to what you all saw previously, but I'm gonna go through them just the same. This is the front of the building, looking at the building basically from the vantage point of behind the Lehigh Shops. That's going to be the new entrance to the building there at the corner of Woodstock and essentially the rear parking lot of the Lehigh Shops. Looking at the building from North Woodrow Street, some of the changes that we made to this building over the course of the review were moving the entrance to the parking garage from Woodstock to Woodrow Street, which was something that was asked for by the community to take some of those traffic conflicts off of Woodstock, where you have the park over there and you have a lot of vehicular and pedestrian movement. So we did that. Again, another vantage point from Woodrow Street, just from the north side of the site, looking across the front part of the building as well. I will note that the stepping down that you're seeing here is in line with the guidance of the plan. Langston Boulevard plan guidance is the step down in height and density, just as this building is doing. This is looking at the site from where Woodstock Park is located. So looking towards the upwards towards the site, up the hill, you're at Woodstock Street here at the bottom of Woodstock Street and 20th Road. And you can see that there's significant grade change on this property, not only from down from Woodstock to 20th, but also along 20th from west to east. And so depending on where you're looking at this building, it looks like a different building with a different height and a different density from every vantage point. And so the plan was very prescriptive about how the building should be massing, and we're following that guidance. You also see here the stormwater overland relief area with the significant buffer and tree canopy. That's all, again, in line with the plan and meeting the plan's guidance as well as the approved streetscape and pedestrian experience. Here's a little bit better vantage point of the entrance to the project. This was not initially how we had designed the site. This is the result of some really good feedback from staff and from the community. Initially, the entrance was just a little bit off that corner. We moved it right to the corner, really sort of created a more of a clear entrance to the building with more of that character of True Ground, Lucky Gardens, that green that we associate with True Ground branding, to really create more of a sort of monumental entrance where this building's character, it's clear where the front of the building is. Looking down Woodstock Street, this was an important change as well. Staff in the community really wanted a more pedestrian experience along Woodstock. And so the architects did a great job creating this sort of podium feel where you have the brick that's along where the garage is, and then moving upwards to the paneling for the residential units, creating a clear delineation between those two parts of the building, but also creating just a better streetscape pedestrian experience as you're walking down the site. We also added the biophilia that you can see there. That was not on the original plan. That was sought by the community and staff. We added that in as well to soften the edges with the pedestrian experience in the sidewalk. There, you're looking now at the corner of the site at 20th and Woodstock Street. We saw this previously, but we're zooming in a little bit. What you're seeing there at the left is the transformer. It is an above ground transformer, but it's screened, and the screening has been the subject of much discussion as to how it should be screened and how it should look. You can see this is the end result, a decorative screening, as well as masonry, really trying to hide that and maintain that pedestrian experience. The reason the transformer has to be is I won't go too far into it, but we have a lot of utilities, tree roots, critical root zones all along that setback. And if we put the transformer below grade, we would impact all of those things. So we had to put it where you're seeing it here today. This is just another the vantage point from the other side at Woodrow and 20th. You're seeing here we activated the streetscape with some amenities. That was feedback that we heard from staff. That was not in the original building. That was a change. It's really an improvement. I think everyone agrees that it just looks much better now. The building interacts with the community, interacts with the pedestrian sidewalk and experience. We added a bench there as well. Just again, to make it a more inviting area for pedestrians, residents, and other folks that are passing through this block. It's just a section to show that stepping down that I talked about. And you can see here that the parking level starts above underground and moves, it kind of comes out of the ground as you go down as you move down grade, if you will, down Woodstock and Woodrow Street. I'll go quickly through these. The P1 and P2 level, these are just the floor plan, showing the typical floor plan. Now on the P1 level, you still have the entirety of the building comprised of units. As you move up the building, because of that stepping, the footprint of where the units are gets smaller and smaller, just given the stepping that's occurring. You can see that in this slide here. We've also worked very hard on the landscape plan for this site. In the middle of the site, you see an interior courtyard. That's for residents. It's a private courtyard for residents. It includes a playground that will have the typical soft material surface that we're used to seeing for playgrounds. It also have a patio, and it will have greenery and some other trees and such in the middle of the site for the residents' experience. And then along the site, we also have significant landscaping, tree plantings, maintenance of existing trees, ensuring that we're keeping that particularly on the southern part of the site, that green buffer, that overland relief buffer, but also adding in streetscape and trees and shrubs and other greenery around the site. This is a slide that I'm highlighting because it's really been one of the more discussed slides during this project, and it has to do with our parking ratio. Parking ratio for this site is 0.88 inclusive of visitor spaces. It's 0.82 if you take the visitor spaces out. There's 12 visitor spaces. And we had to do our homework on this to make sure that the community and staff were satisfied that this would work for the site. And in order to do that, we looked at the way the site is currently parked, and we also looked at the way similar true ground sites are operating today. Sites that are not on a metro, that are of similar distance from the metro and of similar size. And we found that the average across those 4 properties that we selected that you can see here was 0.76, the utilization. And this project is going to be at 0.82 and 0.88 with visitors. So we're above the average. Importantly, the Lucky Gardens site, existing site, is at a 0.70. Of the 44 parking spaces that we have on the site, only about 28 are used at maximum occupancy. And I think that was really important for folks to understand, because I think there was this assumption that was not the case. So we went out, we took pictures at during the busiest times of the afternoon and the evening to ensure that this was in fact the case. We also know exactly who's parking in the lot, because in order to park in the lot, you need to register the vehicle. But it doesn't cost anything. So there really aren't any barriers to parking there. It's just that's what the utilization is in this area of Arlington. And so I will be increasing that parking ratio on the new building. We think it will work and operate and function well, given the studies and the data that we have on prior buildings as well as this one. And that concludes our presentation. We're here and available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex's staff also have a presentation.
Yes, very quickly, I will share my screen. Okay, if everyone can see that. So yeah, I will real quickly go over the handout that was sent to the commission in advance. So I think we all have a good idea of the location of the site. This is a site plan application, so True Ground is proposing construction of a new 11-story residential building with 249 units that will be 100% affordable housing. The existing buildings are proposed to be demolished, and current residents would be temporarily relocated to other True Ground properties with a priority preference to move back into the new property once completed. So the applicant team actually also mentioned this as well. This is in the Langston Boulevard area plan, and this would actually be the very first site plan approved under the newly adopted plan Langston Boulevard that was adopted in 2023. So would be the first plan if approved by the county board. A lot of the goals that are listed specifically, the housing goals that are specifically listed in the Langston Boulevard area plan are being met at this site. As you'll see, there's some, they're similar to the affordable housing master plan goals further down on the sheet, but two bedroom and 3-bedroom units, lower AMIs, things of that nature. Looking at the affordable housing program specifically, you'll see the breakdown of the 249 units. So the applicant does need to meet the base affordable housing ordinance requirements. Seeing as it's a 100% affordable development, we anticipate that to be met with on-site units. They've also requested some bonus density, and they're achieving that through the on-site CAFs as well. And for the purposes of the site plan, they will be affordable for a term of at least 30 years at 30 to 60% AMI. And then some of the affordable housing master plan goals that are being met here, you'll see there are 11 units at 30% AMI and 41 units at 50% AMI. So those lower affordability levels are being met here. There's also a significant amount of 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units. And something different here is, 4-bedroom units, which you don't see in a lot of unit compositions that are being proposed, especially in new site plans. So really quick on the racial equity, comparing the census tract that the project is located in versus the county as a whole. So the site where it is located has a proportionally larger white and Asian population than the county as a whole. And it has also a smaller proportional percentage of the Black population, multiracial and combined populations. And also there are less Hispanic or Latino origin populations in this census tract than there is in the county as a whole. So looking at who will benefit, who's burdened, and who's missing, the proposed 249 on-site CAFs will benefit income-eligible families to live in an area of the county that is very close to transit and contains community amenities. In terms of who is burdened, there will be a temporary relocation, so that has to be considered. However, those residents will have the opportunity to move back into a new CAF unit following construction. So it is difficult to identify who is missing from this opportunity. How we know this information is based off of the census tract data that we have. And in terms of what we do, the county has an opportunity to consider the site plan's proposed affordable housing program. So just to reiterate the staff recommendation, do recommend approval of the affordable housing program, meeting many affordable housing policies in both the Affordable Housing Master Plan and Plan Langston Boulevard, and it does include 249 on-site CAFs. So that is the staff presentation, and we have one public speaker on this item.
Thank you, Alex. Alice?
I had a quick question first, please, Alex. I heard you say something about 30%, 30 years affordability period. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, just because this is a site plan, we're at the site plan stage right now, and that is the standard for site plan units, is that 30-year term. So that is what is being conditioned now. Obviously, if there is an AHIF loan agreement or something in the future like that, there will be a longer affordability period discussed at that point. But for the purposes of just the site plan itself and the condition language in the site plan, it is a term of 30 years.
Okay, thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Alice Hogan. I'm with the Northern Virginia Affordable Housing Alliance. I'm the Arlington director. And I wanted to just congratulate the developer and developer's team for bringing forth an excellent project. I've followed it through this process to this point, and it really has evolved quite a bit. And we're, I think, grateful as a community to be able to interact and engage with applicants to improve a project. And I feel like the applicant really listened to the concerns in the community and has really put forth an excellent project with several improvements. So thank you for that. Nothing you haven't heard. 249 new units on Langston Boulevard is really amazing. As was stated, it will be the first project coming out of the plan Langston Boulevard, which was 12 years in the making. So it's wonderful to see some units come on board. 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units, very unusual. Some deeply affordable, which we desperately need in the county. LEED Silver, again, we're trying to encourage environmental construction. The idea that this many households will be welcomed in this high opportunity neighborhood is really going to add some diversity to this community with the chart that Alex showed before. This community represents a representative amount of African American residents, is half the average of Arlington as a county, and the other racial minorities are also underrepresented here. So ironically, not too far from this area, this was previously part of an African American heritage neighborhood, legacy neighborhood. And so it's wonderful to see folks at all income levels and different racial backgrounds to be able to live in this high opportunity neighborhood. So I congratulate the developer on that, and a big thank you. I know it was a lot of work with the staff as well. So congratulations, and we look forward to this project coming to fruition. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Alice. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, Alex, normally the reports talk about community engagement, and Karen and I think we participated in the two special review committees. Is there any documentation that the Waverly Association and LBA support the project? Do we have any written documentation?
So that's something I can check on, and it might be a better question actually for the applicant. I know when the full kind of county board package goes to the board, there are letters included in that, if there are letters of support, but I don't know true ground if you have more to say on
Zach,
that.
do you have an answer for that?
There are no official letters yet from Waverly Hills or from LBA.
Okay, well, and I'm really torn because this is a great project. I'm also, even though I'm on the commission, I'm also speaking as president of my civic association. The Waverly Civic Association has a litany. While they support affordable housing and the project, they have significant issues. And one issue that I'm a little sympathetic with is parking. And I've been at the area there. There is a lot of rental units there. Even though Lucky Gardens, their parking lot is empty a lot of the times, when you drive around that site there is parking challenges. So I think they may have a legitimate thing on parking. The real issue, what I'd like to openly discuss, this is a great project, as Alice said, in a very high opportunity area. We need more of these. What I fear is if the community doesn't really think they're getting what they're getting, it's really going to make our jobs harder throughout the county getting similarly situated projects like this approved. So that is it. I understand this is just the beginning stages, so hopefully the county board would weigh in, but I think the parking, they have some concerns. The other concern, and I'm still confused over this, the Langston Boulevard plan said 10 stories, but this is 11 stories. And Zach, I think you can explain that, but the Waverly people are still complaining that this is not consistent with LBA, yet we are celebrating that this is the first project approved under LBA. So can you maybe clarify the height thing?
So I'm happy to address that. And just to be clear, that the staff position is the same as ours, that it is compliant with the LBA. The reason for the 11-story issue is it's one of zoning technicality, if you will. There is no portion of this building that will ever be 11 stories above ground. The reason that the staff is making us call it 11-story building is because it has to do with the parking level and how much of the parking level comes out of the ground. And so what happens is, even though the parking level comes out of the ground at greater than a 50% rate, that first level, by the time it does, we're already stepping down. So even though technically at the highest level, it's called an 11-story building, at that level, that's where the parking is 100% buried under the ground. And so that 11th story, if you will, it never comes out of the ground. And the highest the building ever gets above grade is 10. So it's one of these zoning technicalities that really confuses people. We actually didn't call it an 11-story building on purpose, and we try to avoid this issue, but the zoning folks at the county were uptight about this, and they really wanted it to be clear from a zoning technical standpoint. So that's the height issue. On the parking issue, you are correct. That was a major concern. But once we were able to show that data, and particularly the pictures, I think that really calmed some emotions down about this, because I think folks just didn't think we were really studying at that. We were just putting out a number and we weren't sure it would work. We had to prove that it would work. And I think we did. And I think, obviously we still have another hearing coming, but at the planning commission hearing, which was 3 hours long, I don't believe there was a single resident that came out in opposition to testify, which is frankly remarkable, because I mean, even on the least controversial projects, you get folks in opposition. But this was a project that, as the first project under the plan, it garnered a lot of attention. And if you were at the SPRC meetings, there was a lot of attention. Those were packed rooms, and there was high emotions about this, a big change to this neighborhood. But going through that process, the process, I think, did what it was supposed to do. It gave folks a seat at the table. There was feedback that was heard, that was acted upon. There was additional information provided. And the result of that was, at least up until now, an application that has not seen a lot of opposition, at least formally. There isn't, as far as I know, any public opposition in the record from residents. Waverly Hills has not submitted a letter in opposition, nor have any of their residents, as far as I know. Now, we've received feedback over the course of the project, but as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any formal testimony submitted in opposition, which is a great sign that even though folks may not be 100% comfortable with the project, they've been satisfied at least enough that they don't want to come out and publicly oppose it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, just a comment to kind of talk to what Joe was saying in terms of these issues. A lot of these issues are issues that the Langston Boulevard area plan addresses. In terms of you can get with the different technicalities, the heights and whatnot, but those, if you look at the conformity to the plan, the SPRC, the discussion is really, I mean, for any SPRC is to take already what is the plan that is underlined and to make changes where the plan either doesn't have a thing to say and provide input, like let's say the color of the facade. Like sometimes a plan, the Langston Boulevard area plan, like here, it doesn't, sometimes you'll get an area plan that says, we want colorful buildings here to match the character of this park, or, something like that. So like, that's where SPRC are like, oh, well, this doesn't have the color, change the color. So like, here I was like, okay, they did change the color, and some other, changes that were made, but I think a lot of the fundamental issues that people had, in terms of like the parking and other things was already essentially defined. This was a very defined building in terms of the step back nature of it as it tapers down and such. So I think that like overall in terms of what the residents, the quality of life that they're going to get from this building has already been established essentially. These things like benches and things, that could certainly help, but it's not like you can add a bench later or these other sort of things is not going to, oh my gosh, really impact one way or the other, but simply, and I would, to my perspective, ancillary things that SPRC is, I think what most adept at doing is to like fine tune, not like make massive changes, because Langston Boulevard Air Plan, at least in here, was fairly prescriptive in the type of building. And this area, I think, was, as in other areas, heavily considered as to what exact form would be. So overall, I think that this project will definitely be a really important addition for not only the existing residents to get an upgrade to their quality of life, but the hundreds of residents who are not living here and living in perhaps this past winter was pretty bad. So I'm sure that this building will provide a really step change quality of life. High opportunity neighborhood, park right across the street, park 10 minutes to the north, transit access on buses and walk bike. So overall, I think the SPRC really did fine tune the things that needs to be fine tuned. And that's all I have. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason. Other questions or comments? Okay. I know we had just heard this a little while ago, so I don't really have any other comments or questions myself. I think it's a great project. I'm excited to see this move forward. So, thank you very much, both to staff and the applicant, for presenting today. I know this is an action item for us. I would like to recommend approval. I think the rest of the commission would probably agree. Is there a motion to recommend approval of the project?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second it.
Thank you. And let me pull up our voting list. 1 second. Okay. Commissioner Macbeth votes yes. Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
Commissioner Fierro?
Yes.
Commissioner Linick?
Yes.
Commissioner McIlvray?
Yes.
Commissioner Montgomery? Okay, Commissioner Ross?
I would be a yes, but as a True Ground employee, I have to abstain.
Appreciate that. Commissioner Schwartz?
Yes.
Commissioner Surface?
Yes.
And Commissioner Ventrone?
Yes.
Great. It passes unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Next up on the agenda, we have homelessness services update. Really appreciate having DHS here. I know we've been trying to get them to present here for a couple months, and agenda wise and scheduling wise, it hasn't worked out till now, but excited for this presentation and learning more about what's going on in the county when it comes to our services for the unhoused and where some of the challenges are and what's been happening.
Yes, so
Alright.
I will hand it over to Trina Van now.
Actually, can you all hear me? I'm going to go ahead and I'll kick this off. Good evening. My name is Nicole Dula. I am the Housing Assistance Bureau Director within the Department of Human Services. So for those of you who do not know, the Housing Assistance Bureau oversees all things homeless services. We oversee the locally funded housing grants program, our federally funded housing choice voucher program, our state and locally funded permanent supportive housing program, and the county's real estate tax relief. I am joined tonight to do this presentation with Trina Van. She is our fearless leader and coordinator of all things Arlington County Homeless Services and our continuum of care. And so as Kellen alluded to, we're going to provide an update to you all and the public on where we stand with homeless services, programs, and services through the work of the Department of Human Services and our continuum of care. And we'll also highlight some of the future outlook and challenges ahead for our work. So we can go to the next slide. So we'll dive right in and just let us introduce ourselves. And for those that, heard the term continuum of care or COC, we'll define what that is. And essentially, the continuum of care is a local or regional planning body that's created by HUD to coordinate a full system of services for people experiencing homelessness. So we are in fact a network of safety net providers, housing providers, landlords, advocates, public and private entities with a vested interest in ending homelessness in Arlington County. Our continuum of care services includes a coordinated entry system of intake professionals, street outreach teams, emergency shelter, and a range of integrated housing options. Funding for our COC is comprised of local, state, federal, and private philanthropy dollars, and we are bound by federal law, the HERTH Act specifically, on ways our homeless system must respond and report up on the conditions of homelessness within our community. All right, next slide. So when we talk about the COC, here's your visual. This is who we are. DHS, Department of Human Services, serves as the lead agency. What Trina and her team do is procure and oversee the grants that funnel through our homeless services systems. We oversee compliance monitoring. We establish uniform emergency shelter policies. And we oversee the county strategic plan to end homelessness, which you'll hear a little bit about from Trina. There are a number of nonprofits and service providers that work within the continuum of care. They include community partners and other advocates who are very much instrumental to this work, and they are listed here on this slide. Okay, next slide. So as I mentioned, the stakeholders, these are our partners, also support the development of our strategic plan. Some of those stakeholders also play an appointed role in our governance structure. So another visual for you all of just how intricate our homeless systems continuum of care structure is. This is our structure, and really there are boards, there are a variety of subcommittees. We have work groups that are charged with implementing our strategic plan here in Arlington County. Each of these governance bodies hold various oversight responsibilities and work to ensure that our state and federal requirements are being met. They monitor our year-over-year performance and help us work to meet our strategic plan goals and objectives. And so I'll turn it over to Trina to take you through a little bit more of our strategic plan and where we are today.
And I forgot to unmute myself. So hi, good evening, everyone. I'm going to speak very briefly about our strategic plan, and I can share with Alex a link to the actual plan in its entirety if people are interested. But our strategic plan was developed now, gosh, I want to say about 4 years ago, and we do this work with our partners that Nicole named, but we really spent time in community, learning from, community members, other stakeholder groups, people with lived experience about the strengths of our continuum and also some of the challenges and areas that we needed to focus in on. It also provided an opportunity for us to sort of refocus our mission and name the values that would be guiding our work moving forward. So really the COC works to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring by providing affordable and sustainable housing, tailored services, and by centering the voices and expertise of people with lived experience of homelessness. And you can see the driving values that are foundational to our work. And speaking to that foundation, this is a visual map sort of overview of our strategic plan. So you see our vision, our mission and our values sort of here really are the foundation to what work we do as a community. And so we have a number of foundational strategies that really drive all of the key areas of our work, strategies like promoting equity and equitable outcomes and ensuring that we're adhering to best practices in the delivery of homeless services. And then we've organized our work in sort of what we call three pillars: homelessness prevention, our homeless response, and then housing pathways. And all of this work drives up to our overarching goal, which was ending homelessness for all by 2026. And Nicole's going to speak a little bit later about our efforts to this goal. And, we are here in 2026, and sadly, I don't think we can say that we're likely going to achieve this goal this year. I think as we were developing this strategic plan, we had a number of factors that were supporting our efforts and helping us get there. We've made a lot of great progress, but as we've now sort of learned and seen coming out of the pandemic and how resources have shifted away from the supports that we were seeing during the pandemic that were really leading to some very strong outcomes for our system, and some of the policy directives that were in place helping people keep their housing or return to housing quickly. With those ending after the pandemic, we're really seeing a shift back to pre-pandemic levels of need, and you'll see a little bit more about what that looks like and means as we're talking about our outcomes. And then we really can't do this work without the investments that we receive both locally at the state and federal level. And this is a snapshot that does not include all of the fundraising that our nonprofits do with philanthropy, with the private community towards their efforts. And there's additional federal and state monies here too that come to Arlington County that aren't in this visual, because these are really focused on the funds now that DHS as the lead agency for our COC have purview over. And so we monitor the expenditures of these. We ensure that all of these resources are kind of working in sync and in alignment with one another towards our overall goals and local priorities. You'll see here in FY 2026, we have roughly just over $19 million invested in homeless resources across Arlington County. That's from street outreach to permanent supportive housing, the bulk of which are local investments. Nicole will speak to this in a little bit, but we also just competed out our emergency shelter and street outreach funds. So those resources are included in that 11.4 million. The remaining funds we receive from the state for things like targeted prevention or eviction prevention, emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, our planning dollars, and then federal investments here in the more brighter blue, I guess, about 3.6 million. I'll just note it's a very very nuanced detail, but those federal investments don't necessarily run right on our fiscal year cycle. Some of the grants run into FY26, but we also have a visual too of what our 2026 funds from the federal government is slated to be, and we're reaching about $5 million potentially to be renewed for federal funding. And why this is important is we're going to spend a little time talking about some of the changes in the what we're anticipating from shifts in the federal administration around our federal investments for homeless services. I'm happy to share these slides. It's very detailed here, and it's a little blurry, and I'm sorry for that. But this is a visual of our continuum of care and sort of how people interact with our homeless response system. So it speaks to how people are identified, whether they coming to the front door at DHS in our centralized access system or are engaged with our street outreach teams, how they may connect to our domestic violence partners and move from homelessness to sometimes shelter or directly into permanent housing. And these are those investments I spoke to sort of all help fund and support these efforts here. So some of you might be familiar with our annual point in time count numbers. I'll show a little, I'll show some trends there in a minute. That's one sort of point in time snapshot, right, of how many people interact with, or how many people are experiencing homelessness on a given night in the year. But I think it's really important for us to understand the full scope of how many people are impacted by homelessness in our community in a given year. And so this speaks to FY 2025 data, and you'll see that over 1,300 people had engaged in our services, from emergency shelter, street outreach, to our COC funded permanent housing interventions. On the left of the slide, you'll also see by intervention how many people were served in these various programs. I'll make a note here that the targeted prevention number is not, it's obviously more, it was about 1,600 households that were connected to emergency assistance through the Department of Human Services. That's not part of the 1,300, but it might be somewhat duplicative of those two numbers, but it's important to demonstrate how many people, how many households are coming to DHS requesting assistance with rental assistance, eviction prevention in FY25. But you'll also see the number of people that were then served in emergency shelter, our street outreach programs, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing. And each of these interventions are important, right? They play an important role in our continuum of care and in our community. And you'll see here then on the right, from those various interventions, the proportion of people who are able to exit to permanent housing. And we'll see different kind of dynamics play out in some of our emergency shelter programs, but across the board, you'll see strong performance, particularly in our rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing, about attaining and maintaining permanent housing for people who were previously experiencing homelessness. Arlington County also has provides housing location services. So we have housing locators who receive referrals from case managers in DHS programs like our behavioral health teams, aging and disability services, some of Housing Assistance Bureau programs like housing grants, and the continuum of care nonprofits. And these referrals are requests essentially for housing assistance for clients that case managers are working with. Our housing locators then work in community, connecting with landlords, property owners, our committed affordable housing providers, to identify vacancies that they can then match to the needs of the referred clients. And so you'll see here kind of a look at the last 2 fiscal years of how many clients were referred for housing location assistance, right around 200 clients each of these years. And you'll also see the number of leads that we were able to provide for those referred clients. In last fiscal year, over 4,000 leads were provided to those clients. We're seeing about an average last year of 20 leads per client, and our housing locators were able to turn those leads around in one day, which is really critical because we know those vacant units move very quickly. And so for people who are looking for housing and competing for rental units with the broader community, having timely access to leads that match, their needs, their income levels, their rent limits, requirements is critical. So we're really proud of the work that is coming out of our housing location team as well. So this is a snapshot that maybe more of you are familiar with. We share this update annually when we conduct our point in time count. This is a federal and state requirement of all COCs to conduct a count of people experiencing sheltered and unsheltered homelessness once a year. It usually occurs at the end of January each year. This year, I think for the first time in my whole career, we had to move that date into early February because of the weather. And we'll be sharing the results of this year's count later in the spring, late spring. But you'll see here kind of exactly sort of the trend that I spoke to earlier about how during the pandemic, when we saw policies such as the eviction moratorium or the extent to which we were receiving COVID response funds for helping people to exit congregate shelter quickly, how the overall numbers of people experiencing homelessness in this trend line really dropped. And then as those resources and policies began to shift again, how we started quickly moving back into those higher levels of need pre-pandemic. And we're seeing those trends move across all of our subpopulations as well. I'm going to speak a little bit about the HUD Continuum of Care funding. While it comprises about 25% of our COC's funding, HUD is a significant player in our continuum of care and directs a lot of the policies and the practices that we have to sort of organize around as a community, as a COC. And every year they've put out a what we call the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. And this is our community's opportunity to reapply for projects that were previously funded, what we're calling renewal grants, and compete for new funding, new projects, depending on congressional authority, budget authority that HUD has. And so right now, I'll start with what we know, and the bottom line is that there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of the competition process. We sort of have three pretty significant things in play right now. We have a second version of a NOFO that was released in December that illustrates sort of HUD's sort of pretty clear signals of the direction that they want to take in terms of their funding and their policies. And I'll speak briefly about that in the next slide. But that NOFO is encumbered currently in a national court case where some national advocates and other cities and COCs filed an injunction against HUD because of the practices and the timelines and the requirements that were included in the original NOFO. That's not even listed here. That was released in November. And so right now, we are still waiting to hear a final outcome of that court case. We're expecting one in sometime mid to later this month. But in the meantime, the judge had also ordered HUD to release a non-competitive funding process. So to cancel the 2025 NOFO, we had to implement some preparatory steps for that process, which we were able to complete, but HUD has not been directed yet to issue or administer those funds. So we are on standby at this point. And then just recently this month, Congress did pass the Transportation and HUD bill, as many of you are probably tracking. And what it did was it did set some parameters for the 2026 NOFO, and it also included some rolling deadlines and rolling timelines for HUD to meet in terms of both a potential competition and mandates if those timelines aren't met, how to non-competitively fund 2024 grants. And so our COC nonprofits, our COC members, including people with lived experience, and with DHS support and leadership, we're really tracking the outcomes of all of these moving parts, because it's going to have ripple effects to our funded projects and programs, and depending on when grants turn over. I mentioned some of HUD shifting policies and practices. This slide really speaks to that. There are many requirements under the Hearth Act that we follow, but I wanted to call attention in green to sort of 5 significant ones that are really sort of starting, HUD is starting to pivot away from, that for the past decade plus we've been following and preparing for year to year. In gray, these are the things that sort of remain unknown and are really dependent on the outcome of that court case against HUD. But we are expecting some shifts and reductions. Things like caps to permanent housing funding requests that we can make to HUD in our annual competition. If funded, some of our programs may also need to transition to alternative models of housing, away from permanent housing to more like transitional housing. And we're seeing movements away from housing first, which is a set of principles that really speaks to sort of low barrier access to permanent housing and bringing supports and resources to people in housing to help them sustain that. HUD is now moving back to more higher barrier or treatment first approaches, meaning that tenants will need to participate in services and follow sort of their treatment requirements to be able to sustain housing. So some significant shifts away from the way we've been operating in these past years. And then I think I now hand it back to Nicole.
Yes. So I'm going to try to bring up the mood from the grim realities or potential realities of what might be heading our way, just to also share right now about, recent updates and notable highlights of some of the progress that we have made. Starting with, Arlington County has sustained functional zero for our homeless veterans since 2015. And simply by definition, that means at any point in time, our community does not have more veterans experiencing homelessness than we can house in average month. And we have demonstrated that we have sustained that functional zero for over 11 years. We are also very closely approaching functional zero for our transition age youth homelessness, who are youth that are between the ages of 18 and 25. And we are closely reaching a functional zero for chronic homelessness. And that is really defined as a person or a household with a disability who has been homeless for 12 consecutive months or have experienced at least 4 episodes of homelessness in the last 3 years that accumulate to at least 12 months. And that's deemed chronic homelessness. So we're close to functional zero there. We have established a very robust lived experience advisory council, which is comprised of individuals who are currently and or formerly homeless. This body conveys input and policy recommendations around our efforts to prevent and end homelessness. And we do compensate this body for working as part of our council. And they're very instrumental in a lot of our decisions and meetings that we have throughout our governance structure. We have also recently removed a 90-day residency policy to access shelter. However, we will still continue to prioritize Arlington residents that have established connections to Arlington, and that could be either through IDs, connection to existing services, benefits, our school system, or former shelter connection. We've also competed and awarded, as Trina mentioned earlier, our homeless services contracts for emergency shelter. So for family and single adult. We've now embedded options for overflow should those shelter capacities become maxed. We've awarded contracts for street homeless. We've also built in through both of our adult shelters day programming activities, and we now have family non-congregate shelter overflow, which is the first that we've been able to do it this fiscal year with Bridges to Independence. So really excited that they were able to stand that up within, I would say, literally weeks of signing the contract. And then finally, in development, the county is building out permanent hypothermia space and expanded options for single and older adults at the Homeless Services Center. So exciting opportunities and movements to come. Okay, next slide. So just to bring the mood a little bit down again, it's important that, we're here tonight to also share the challenges ahead and realistically paint that picture of what that might look like. So our need for affordable housing, our need for homeless residents' ability to secure housing, and our need for flexible funding, if these needs are unmet, we will continue to be challenged and strained with even our best laid strategies that we presented tonight for ending homelessness. So this also includes the need for compassionate leasing screening practices similar to our Arlington landlord partnership that will support our unhoused with housing barriers like poor credit, criminal records, and prior evictions. We need that support so that our unhoused can obtain leases. Our state funding is also likely to remain flat in the upcoming year. Flat funding is de facto cut to program and services. There is ongoing uncertainty, as Trina, really articulated here about the federal funding process, which poses challenges for us. Federal and state fair market rent subsidies that support some of our permanent supportive housing as well as rapid rehousing programs continue to fall short and impede access. So as our fair market rents continually lag behind the average rents here in a high cost market, it's hard for us to compete and put those subsidies to use for our residents. Safety net and homeless services, resources and staffing retention remain strained. Burnout and retention is high across all of our COC systems. And this also includes our housing providers and landlords. Trina really highlighted some of the work of our housing locator. We just recently lost our second housing locator position that supported households subjected to sort of forced displacements or residents that had to relocate. That was a term limited 2-year position. Is really helpful in our ability to connect people to affordable housing and then help them through the leasing process. So we're now down to one housing locator in the county. And then finally, securing and sustaining long-term master lease, considering all of this, are in jeopardy of being obsolete. So usually with our rapid rehousing or PSH funding, year over year with HUD grants, state grants, we've been able to broker deals with landlords to take some units offline for the purposes of moving our shelter residents into housing. We take over the master lease for those apartments. But if, again, funding is cut, our ability to sustain those specialty projects year over year will become strained. Okay, and next slide. So in conclusion, here's our call to action for those in the community that have an interest in joining our work to end homelessness. Joining our work could be in the form of a time commitment to any one of our COC subcommittees or governance structures. It could be connecting directly with our shelter providers on their specific needs and or weighing in on policy and other advocacy avenues to support our homeless services programs and services overall. And then next slide. We'll leave you with our contact information on how to reach us, and we are happy to take any questions that you all may have.
Thank you both for your comprehensive presentation and all the work that you and your colleagues do to help the most vulnerable Arlingtonians. So it's very appreciated and very needed. Um, I really appreciate you walking us through the HUD funding challenges as well. That was going to be one of my questions, so I'm glad that you all, provided an update. And I was especially wondering, I knew that there were provisions in the appropriations bill that address some of the concerns, but I didn't quite know all the specifics. So that was super helpful and informative. I had a question, and maybe I missed it, about shelter wait times. What are we looking at right now in terms of if someone is unhoused and they need emergency shelter? What does that look like?
I can speak a little bit to this, and then Nicole, if you think of anything, please feel free to add in. So our practice for shelter admissions it's really dependent also on need and sort of the presenting issues that someone might face, right? But our shelters are largely full, and bed turnover is a challenge. Fortunately, right now with the hypothermia program open, we have some expanded capacity that allows us to serve additional folks, and we've had to, at some cases, even bring folks in on sort of like a warming basis. We didn't have the bed available, but we wanted to make sure that people were coming from in. So we don't maintain, I think, like a wait list in a traditional sense of the way, and we try to prioritize folks based on some of the vulnerabilities and risks that they might present with. So I don't think I have a perfect answer for that, but I don't know, Nicole, if you would add anything to that.
Just add, I mentioned the 90-day residency policy has been removed. So right now we can serve anybody. So bed availability is really based on turnover and when that is reported at any given day. And managing a wait list is just, it's impossible to do. So we're really managing on a bed availability basis daily. And we are full. We've been full since the opening, since prior to hypo. We've been full consistently throughout hypo every day. In fact, we continue to report numbers up to the county manager just in terms of what our street outreach numbers look like on any given night, as well as what our bed capacity and overflow capacity is across our shelter providers.
Thank you for that. The waiver of the 90-day residency requirement, is that just temporary during hypothermia season, or is that a new permanent policy moving forward?
It's a new permanent policy. We're rolling out implementation. Our COC partners are getting trained up this month. So if you're calling the 1010 line, depending on who you, that's our shelter hotline, 228-1010. Depending on who answers, it might sound a little bit different for this month, but coming in March, that'll be fully implemented across the COC, and that's a permanent policy change. So we're really start looking first at eligibility as the person really experiencing homelessness has no other options, and then looking at sort of the different factors that they're experiencing. Do they have that connection and tie to Arlington, and then helping them get connected either to our local resources or to if they have a known connection in another community, trying to get them back connected to their community of origin. That's not the best term, but
sounds
yeah.
Great. And I know I've talked to you before about my frustration trying to help people through the process, and oh, your license that says you were an Arlington resident isn't good enough, and you have to go get a notarized letter from your previous landlord saying that you still live here. I mean, that was insane barriers to people. So I appreciate you guys working to try to remove those barriers, and I know that opens you up to potentially a surge of folks coming from other localities to Arlington. But at the end of the day, it's shelter and everyone needs it. So I appreciate that Arlington is trying to help whoever they can. The genesis of that, was it tied to something specific, or is that just Arlington is just trying to reduce barriers in general?
So we received guidance from the county attorney's office about needing to revisit this. So we've been working with them directly to make sure that we were following through and aligned with law and legal precedent. residents.
Sounds good. Always good to be aligned with the law.
Yes.
Joe, question for you.
Yeah, kind of a clarification. I mean, this was new to me. I mean, so if someone from Colorado came in and they were homeless, we would take them over a resident? Is that what I'm hearing?
It really depends. So there's a little bit more nuance in the policy, and I'm happy to come back and talk about this at another time too. But we first prioritize, and this is assuming, right, that we have a bed space available. That's part of the challenge. But if there was a bed available and we had someone known that was connected, had a connection to Arlington, we would start there. And then, but we do, if that person from Colorado or another community, it doesn't happen too often, but were to contact us and really had no other place to go, no other options, and we had the space available, we have a mechanism by which we could get them into shelter, help them start working on an alternative plan, or if they present with some very, significant risks and vulnerabilities like chronic health issues, they're, a recent victim of a crime, perhaps this is someone fleeing domestic violence, then we have some flexibility to work with them.
Right.
We're really trying to tailor that admission based on what they need.
Right. Well, I think you guys are doing a great job. We're fortunate to have the nonprofit network in addition to the county staff that's working with them. The federal situation is most unfortunate, but my only concern is in these dire budget times, and the county's got to deal with the budget, that from a public perception, the residency thing may give some taxpayers heartburn. So that was my only concern there, but I think you guys are handling it well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Other questions, comments? Is the presentation, is that something that we can post on our website and have the commissioners all have as well? That would be helpful. And when was the point in time count this year? You said it moved to early February?
Yes, February 4th.
February 4th, okay.
This last week.
Okay.
10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Did you guys do the youth one this year?
No, we actually are, due to some of just the kind of constraints of that we're facing right now and tracking the HUD pieces, we thought we might be better situated to offer that count and that resource fair kind of model in the spring, closer to before school lets out, so we can also catch and educate young people about resources and services available to them after they're sort of, getting ready for summer and may not be connected to the school support system in the same way.
Is there any concern that potentially capping the housing grant program could make it harder to place people who are sort of exiting our, I don't know if that's considered part of the continuum of care. I guess I don't think it is, but is that going to present challenges? Because that was another, way to keep people housed. And yeah, I'm just curious because I know that's something that the board was very interested in their budget guidance for this coming budget cycle, is capping not eligibility, but the number of folks. I think it's the number of folks who can receive housing grants each year.
Yeah, I'll take this one. So yeah, any capped housing grants. Housing grants is what we call a permanent housing option that is embedded sort of in our continuum of care model as an available housing option that we have within our tool belt of, services and programs, right? So if you think about rapid rehousing that most of our homeless shelter providers offer, it's term limited. And the idea is with case management and those term limited supports in rapid rehousing, we can move individuals or households onto either a permanent subsidy, long-term subsidy, or they would assume, the full rent on their own. Housing grants has been a key resource for a lot of our rapid rehousing households, right, to move on to or bridge to. And when you think about capping that program, we've shared that right now our shelters are full. it sort of does limit sort of what's in our tool belt of options of what we can provide as a community.
Thank you, Nicole. Karen?
Thanks. I have just like a general question. So how successful have you been in the last 2.5, 3 weeks getting people basically off the streets? Because I walk my dog in the morning and I sometimes see people like asleep on the streets. And I mean, I know people are out there trying to get them into shelters, but how, I mean, I don't know, do you have like some stats or, or do you have any idea how difficult it is to get some of these people out of these sort
Yeah.
of alcoves of where they're sleeping or wherever they're doing?
Yeah, we actually meet with our outreach teams monthly to check in, and we have a pretty strong pulse on sort of the trends that they're seeing. I'd say that it ebbs and flows, but the numbers are generally kind of in the same range on a month-to-month basis. We have street outreach services available 7 days a week, and we have teams that jointly with Path Forward and the Department of Human Services Treatment on Wheels that go out together, and they do twice a week, like early outreach, we call it. So they're really trying to connect to folks in those kind of prime hours before people disperse. And I think it's been a challenge. We see some people really like, especially in these colder months, weeks now. It feels like years. It's been a really brutal winter. More people, especially as they age, being willing to come in. And so our hypo program has actually been pretty stretched. As I mentioned, folks are coming in, if not for a bed, at least for warming, and connecting in that way. But unfortunately, I say this a lot, this issue is really, really complex, and some people are just not ready to come in and not engage in services. And it has, I think there are some ripple effects of some of the other like socio-political kind of dynamics going on in our world right now that also build distrust with social systems, government systems. So and understandably, so it has been tricky, but we have people there. A lot of them are probably really well known to our outreach teams. It's just trying to build that rapport and trust. We've also had, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but we've also had a lot of success getting people straight from sleeping outside to permanent housing with some of the resources that we have. So there's been some really good shifts happening there too, not nearly at the numbers that we're seeing, in other areas, because the population is so tricky to get them sort of prepared for that piece, but it's happening. So I don't know, that's what I would offer.
No, thank you, because it's sort of unsettling sometimes early in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know the briefing that you provided is really sort of a policy level, look at what happens, and there's so much more specificity for the actual experience that people have, like going through intake and these services. And I know you guys have been working to make improvements in those processes too. And I appreciate I think the electronic screens now for DHS, like the intake center, so that folks don't have to verbally say in front of everyone who's in the room, like, here's all the problems that I'm experiencing and here are the things that I need to have shelter, have food. One of the other challenges was a bit of a bifurcation between like the homelessness services and things like behavioral health and other like DHS programs and services. Has there been any progress in just having like one sort of single intake process for literally all of the services that DHS offers, or is that still something that, down the line and maybe in the future? But I know that was something that we had talked about before, that like it can be a lot to just get someone to go and agree to accept services. And I find often that people, and I know you guys see this every day, they don't feel like they deserve them. They feel like they're for other people who are worse off than them, even though they're homeless and they don't have anything to eat and they have no money. And I always try to remind people, like, you had a job, you were paying taxes, you paid for all these things. Like, you deserve them just as much as everyone else does. But yeah, if you could talk a little bit about that sort of integration, if that's a work in progress, or has there been any progress made in the last like 2 years or so, in having that sort of like one DHS, like if you need public health, if you need behavioral health, if you need, housing assistance or anything, you can just go one place or one phone number, one caseworker, and they can help you, with eligibility for everything.
Try and take that one. I mean, ideally that illustration, that picture would be fabulous, right? As best as what we've been able to do at DHS is our customer service teams are stretched throughout our campus. And so they're all reporting under one umbrella where they have to command all of the programs and services that DHS offers. And there's well over 200 of them, right? And so depending on the needs, it's really hard if, for someone that's coming in to then, identify who might be a behavioral health therapist that's available for, that day. But they are trained customer service teams, right, throughout our campus, are responsible for that screening. They're very good at that screening in terms of, what might need to happen first, second, and third, and what they can at least get that day of, once they're connected. It's not always seamless, and I think in one of the instances, I think, Kellen, that you're familiar with, it may be for intake assessments at building 2, you may have to set an appointment, you may have to come back. But the idea is there is no really wrong door to our services, and we try to screen as best as possible for all available needs. But it does take time. There are certain people who are licensed to speak on behalf of certain needs. And it's hard to have that specialty at that front door at all levels when DHS runs over 200 or so programs and services.
Appreciate that. And again, very excited about the changes in the residency, piece. And because I just know too, encountering people who need help and having to figure out, like, wait, were you an Arlington resident? I know about Arlington programs. Oh, no, you were in Fairfax. Let me Google what Fairfax's, intake protocol is, and who you're supposed to, contact there, as opposed to just saying, like, you're in Arlington, you can call this number and they can help you out, or at least refer you to who you're supposed to go to. I think that's going to be super helpful to folks who need help. So really appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? Great. Well, thank you again. Really appreciate everything that you're doing for Arlingtonians. And I know it's a lot of work. I know you guys are short-staffed and underfunded. So appreciate you putting in all the hard work to help make sure people have a place to call home and shelter. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much for
having us.
having us tonight.
Good to see you all.
Okay. Next on the agenda, we have development updates.
Yes. So I do not have any specific updates tonight. The one thing I did want to mention, I know I sent an email out about it, but there is no Housing Commission meeting next Thursday, February 19th. So there's no meeting at all that night. There will be a Housing Arlington forum later on. Staff is working on a communications and engagement plan on that now, but just want to reiterate there will be no meeting next Thursday, just so that everyone understands that. So as far as meeting coverage goes, we have one site plan SPRC that needs coverage, and that's the Alexan Courthouse site plan, which is in the courthouse area. And then there's a second group that we need coverage on, which is, and I sent an email on this one, it's called the Pentagon and Crystal City Council. Maybe if one of our commissioners lives in that area, it would be a good opportunity for them. But that is also a standing advisory group that meets, I think, 4 times a year total. And the first meeting would be March 5th or March 9th. March 9th. It does not.
Alex, what is that council?
Yeah, so they are focused on Pentagon and Crystal City pretty much exclusively. It used to be known as the Crystal City Citizens Review Council. It basically monitor, identify issues, and ensure the success of the Crystal City Sector Plan and Pentagon City Sector Plan. So I'm happy to send the link if I haven't already. But there's 4 meetings, one in March, one in May or June, one in September, and then one in December this year. So there's an opportunity there. We haven't had a representative for this for a while. The last one was Haley Norris. And so she hasn't been on the commission for a little bit now. So we do have an opening there, and the commission staff on that has asked for a representative if we can find one. So it's both that and then also the Alexan Courthouse, which is on so the first SPRC was actually a week ago tonight, February 5th, but the next SPRC will be coming up soon where community benefits are discussed.
Yeah, hey, Alex, I'll do that one. That's right down near my gym. So I'm very familiar with the building. It's actually, it looks like a brand new building. They're going to tear it down, but they're going to put a lot of high rent, market rate apartments. So I'll do that if you want.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. So the SPRCs are covered. It's really just the Crystal City and Pentagon City Council. So let me know if you're interested in that, but that is it for development updates today.
And Alex, I think I saw an Earl now. Is there an LRPC yet for the new Roslyn Marriott Hotel mega project or not?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I can look into that and see if that has been.
It's coming, and if you want, we were briefed by the developer, and I did an 8-page PowerPoint that I'll gladly share with you all. I'll send to Alex, and you can share it. But no, the developer's just meeting with the individual apartments around here, civic associations. The application was filed December 22nd, but they're waiting for the planning, that first stage of the thing.
Okay. Thanks, Joe, and thanks, Alex. Okay. If no other development updates, moving on to our liaison updates. I had a couple things first that I wanted to update folks on. One is a reminder, thank you to everyone who has signed up using Sign Up Genius for representing the Housing Commission before the county board. We still have 5 open board meeting slots for primary folks. So please do that if you can, because the default is that I have to go and I can't make all those. So it's super helpful to have you all helping with that. And yeah, so if you can go back to my email and sign up for the Sign Up Genius. And also, once I have that, I can send out the finalized work plan that we approved in January as well. Other updates for the community engagement task force recommendation. So Brian and I met with Simia Bird, the head of CPHD, and I think the head communications person for CPHD as well, to walk through the recommendations and talk about, why we're recommending some things. And I think it was a really positive meeting. There were definitely items that they said that they could look into just implementing, they thought they were good ideas and appreciated our recommendation. There were other things that they were like, we'd love to do this, but this would really take the county board providing the resources, for this. So I think I've already requested meetings with all the county board members on this, but I need to follow up. and make sure, because nothing is scheduled yet, but that will be happening, especially around budget season, making sure that they're thinking about making sure that we're setting aside funding for public engagement with historically marginalized communities, and actually fulfilling our promises in the equity resolution is really important. So yeah, that work is continuing and ongoing. Any questions about that? Okay. Then I want to talk about the Affordable Housing Ordinance Bill in the General Assembly. I don't know if people have been following what's happened. I was incredibly frustrated to learn that I have not watched the video myself, but I was told that the Arlington Chamber of Commerce and AOBA, working on behalf of millionaire developers, killed the House version of the bill. So that was introduced by Lopez. That was House Bill 922. I think the county was caught by surprise. I think the argument was, until we know exactly what the county's going to do, they shouldn't have the authority to do anything, which, subverts democracy and is just really frustrating, because it's, hey, if you got millions of dollars, you can pay a lobbyist, you can get the General Assembly to do anything. The Senate bill, sponsored by Favola, is still alive. It actually just passed the Senate, but in order to ensure passage, the county negotiated with our developer friends and have made fairly significant changes to the bill. So developers have guaranteed themselves a place in the process to consider any changes to the ordinance. So they define the criteria by which the county board will consider how the ordinance will be changed to include equal representation of developers. And then I think the Housing Commission and Planning Commission. We should get a lobbyist, because then apparently we can get changes to any bill we want. But yeah, they changed, they added ceilings to what the county board would be able to do. And they changed a bunch of the numbers, which honestly, I can't tell you the impact right now, because I wasn't consulted. I reviewed the bill before this meeting, but I would need to have conversations with other folks to figure out what's changed. But I'm incredibly frustrated that developers have, again, subverted the public process that we went through with them and the rest of the community last year to just get what they want. And, just another example of pay to play. So I guess it's good that something is still moving forward. It's not what we originally had worked on or discussed with the county board. And again, just very frustrated that at the last minute, their lobbyists can swoop in and dictate the terms for how the Arlington community gets to have affordable housing built. So Brian, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I won't talk ad nauseum on this, as I'm obviously very emotionally involved with this particular bill. But what I will say is that in relation to the ceiling you mentioned, just to explain to some folks who aren't entirely familiar, the ceiling that Kellen was referring to is the limit of benefits that the county can extract from developers. And so basically developers were able to create a level of predictability for themselves as to what the county can obtain, which is troubling, of course, because that isn't necessarily in line with what would benefit all of the residents. And as was stated, this was done outside of the process that took place over last year. And so much of the work that we all participated in was essentially thrown to the wayside through a couple of phone calls. And I think it's indicative of the work that we all still need to do. And I'm incredibly appreciative for everything that many of the members on this body have put forward in terms of their time and their efforts to make what I believe to be a great product. But this isn't the end of the effort, right? It's unfortunate setback, but there's still work to be done. So I just wanted to take a moment to just thank everyone for the work that they've done on that, and to say that this is only the beginning.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, again, I don't know if I agree with the changes that were made to the bill or not, and maybe I would be perfectly okay with them. My main issue is that a couple lobbyists were able to decide what the county gets to do instead of the community itself. And I don't think that's how policy decisions should be made. I know that's how they often are, but I don't think that's right. I don't think that's good for our community. And yeah, it's just incredibly frustrating to have it play out this way, out of public view, and with wealthy, interests just dictating this is how things are going to work for Arlington County. Any questions on that or comments? Okay. So that I've said that piece. So any
Wait,
liaison?
hey, Kellen,
Yeah,
was it the Arlington Chamber or the State Chamber?
the
Out of
Arlington Chamber.
curiosity.
My understanding is it was the Arlington Chamber.
And we had negotiated something with them during the process last year.
The chamber, so they spoke at our meeting before we adopted our final recommendation. And I think they neither supported nor opposed what we were considering. Their position evolved and they ended up opposing. If you look at their legislative priorities that they published towards the end of the year, they ended up coming out against it and said Arlington County shouldn't have this authority. But yeah, my understanding it was the Arlington Chamber and AOBA. Again, I haven't watched the video, so I don't know specifically. I can't verify that, but that's what I've been told from folks who have been more involved in the process.
Hey, Callum, can you send us or anyone send us the paperwork on this so we can maybe do our own internal advocacy with who we know or whatever? Because I mean, this is, and I don't want to say anything because I don't want to print it in the paper, but this is a little bit unfortunate. But if you could send us whatever the state did, and I thought Jason was down there. Jason, were you down there when this was considered or something? I know you went down there for something. But
Yeah, I think it may have been, I was in the Senate, local government. Was this, I think there was a bill to allow all, every single, I'm not sure if it was, wait, Kellen, did you say the Senate version is still alive or not?
The Senate version is still alive. So Favola's version is alive and passed the Senate. So it would go to the House. And hopefully it's not killed in the House again. I think it died in subcommittee in the House. And I think it caught the county by surprise that it was killed. And it surprised me too how easily it was. You get two people who get up there and say, we oppose this as the business interests. And the subcommittee just says, yep, okay, we're going against this then.
so do we have the authority to send a letter, or can we write to the county to send a letter?
We can write to the county board and recommend action that they take.
Yeah.
But we can't can't send a.
Maybe we should do that to just keep hope alive here.
I mean, my understanding is the county is trying to keep it alive, and I think that's why they negotiated with the developer community to try to keep it alive. Which again, I find frustrating that they had to go to wealthy business interests and say, what can we do to stop you from killing this?
Let me just interject quickly on that point. Like, I understand the point, but I think to what Joe is saying, having the conversation with the county board now, I think would perhaps chase them in the future. But more importantly, what should have happened is that if this was going to take place, if some sort of conversation was going to happen with the developers, I would have appreciated if any of us had known that, right? Because we were integral in creating this bill, and without, at least the best of my knowledge, I wasn't consulted, without any sort of consultation with the Housing Commission, this action was taken, right? And I think that made it all the more difficult for us to even have any sort of eyes on this as to what the final product was going to look like. And to Joe's point, you know, a letter I think could be helpful, but frankly, it would have been somewhat obviated by just having the conversation, right? You know, so.
Yeah, and Brian, and not to belabor this, I think the challenge with how our General Assembly operates, which is everything is happening like, you know, spur of the moment, like this committee, you find out maybe 24 hours in advance that a bill is going to be considered in committee, and oh, you found out that bill just, you know, was killed, and I don't know that there would have been time for them to have any sort of public process after that happened to engage with us. I think the county probably was trying to do the best they could given the situation. I don't know if I would have made the same choices as the county, you know, board and their legislative liaison made with this, but I know it's during session. It's all happening so fast, and they're also looking at how many bills, and this is one of many that impact the county that they're working on. So, yeah, I think it's really unfortunate. My frustration lies with the development community for doing this in the first place and just saying, I don't really care what the people of Arlington want. This is what we want. And we have money and power behind us to get what we want. That's what I find frustrating. Less so, you know, how the county responded to try to keep this alive, at least in the Senate. But if we were to do a letter, what would the letter say? That we continue to support the bill. I mean, at this point, they can't make changes because it's already passed the Senate. It's not going to go back to the Senate. So if the House were to change it, I think it just dies then, is my understanding. But yeah, so would the letter just be, we continue to support this, or, hey, we don't like the fact that the developer lobbyist did this, or what would we be saying to the board?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Callum. I mean, we would technically need a lobbyist to maybe do what the others did. So I think, you know, we really can't do anything since it's in place. And
yeah, this is the feeling that so many Americans, you know, feel in the face of wealth and power. It's just frustrating. But I wanted to share that with you all because I know we worked really hard and we engaged with the community, including with the developer community, and had a lot of discussions last year about this and tried to make it as palatable as possible through a public, you know, process. It's just very disappointing that they felt the need to have their own special private process to get what they want after they decided they didn't like what we had come up with. Okay. Any other liaison reports? Anything for SIDSAC?
No.
Okay. And I don't think we have a C2E2 representative anymore now that Katie has left our commission. Any other, Joe, I know you reached out to
the meeting
February.
Yeah, I reached out to them. I connected with them, and I'm on the email list. So, but February 17th is a meeting. I'm going to have to call them because the county board has an open meeting with all civic associations that I may have to go to. But I'll just touch base with them and look at their agenda and see what's what. But at least I've made contact, and I know two members on the commission.
Great, thank you, Joe. Jason, anything from the climate action group?
No, hasn't started. Not to my knowledge, hasn't started yet. So.
Okay, and I don't think we had anyone sign up for the Tenant Landlord Commission subcommittee to look at the Human Rights Act and the housing provisions. So I plan to just reach out to the chair and let him know that, assuming that I can make meetings, I'm happy to do that and represent the Housing Commission. I don't know when they're planning to meet, but I'm happy to do that if I'm available. Okay, anything else before we adjourn? Great, well, thank you all. I hope you have a good rest of your February, and we'll see you all. Well, I'll be in touch about budget probably prior to our next meeting, where we will likely have to vote on budget recommendations. But so I'm sure I'll be in touch soon after the county manager reveals his proposed budget for the year. So thank you all. Have a good rest of your night. Meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Gillen.
Thank you. Good night.